Carlson. I'm from the eBusiness Suite development team, and I'll be talking to you today about planning your upgrade to Oracle eBusiness Suite 12.2, sharing with you some key planning considerations for doing a good upgrade project. This is our standard safe harbor statement. And here's my agenda. I'm going to do a very brief run through of our eBusiness Suite strategy, and then I'm going to dive right into 10 key upgrade planning considerations, and then I'll wrap it all up with some key takeaways. So our overall strategy is pretty straightforward. We're going to continue to make advances in the eBusiness Suite. You can continue to rely upon it to run your core business operations. At the same time, we're going to help you to take advantage of some advances in Oracle's technology platform, things like big data, cloud, mobile, social, and Internet of Things. And of course, we also have some SaaS apps that you can also take advantage of while using eBusiness Suite. Now, in terms of our eBusiness Suite cloud strategy, there's basically three threads to that, three different ways that you can leverage our cloud platform. And in the first, you can basically run your eBusiness Suite on Oracle's cloud platform. Secondly, you can look forward to a new applications family that we're calling SaaS on PaaS for eBusiness Suite that we're going to build using Oracle's cloud platform. These new apps will focus, at least initially, on Internet of Things functionality. And then finally, we have our existing cloud products that were built using Oracle's cloud platform. Now, digging in a bit on what we mean by eBusiness Suite now available on Oracle Cloud, what we're really talking about here is that for the past year or so, we've been able to run the eBusiness Suite on Oracle's public cloud. And that's the same eBusiness Suite that you know today, the same that you're running in your data center, same code levels, same customizations, same integrations. You really just now have the option to run it in our data center instead of yours. This is all part of Oracle's larger cloud strategy, which includes offerings in the software as a service space, platform as a service, and infrastructure as a service. And when we speak about running the eBusiness Suite on Oracle Cloud, what we mean from a technical perspective is that you're going to be running it on top of a combination of our infrastructure services, that is our network, our compute, and our storage services, and in particular, that would be your eBusiness Suite applications tier. And then at the same time, you'll be taking advantage of one of our platform services, Database Cloud Service. That is, you're subscribing to the Oracle database. Now, why am I even talking about running Oracle eBusiness Suite on Oracle Cloud in the context of an upgrade talk? Well, it's because as you can imagine, you can get faster deliveries of large projects such as upgrades if you have easy access and the ability to quickly spin up environments. That is, you may not want to go out and provision all new hardware just for the duration of your upgrade project. You may want to take advantage of your ability to do kind of rapid spinning up of environments where you can do dev, test, training, and so forth in the context of your upgrade project. And we'll be talking more about that later in this discussion. Now, in terms of our advances in the kind of the core of eBusiness Suite, our organic advances, there we have three different threads of investment. We have functional innovation, we have modern user experience and mobility, and we have operational efficiency. And if you look closely under each of these buckets, you'll note that I've highlighted in red some of the sub-themes that are distinct to 12.2 and could form part of the value prop of going to 12.2. So these would include things like 12.2 support for subscription economy, outcome-driven procurement, and a variety of other customer-driven enhancements. In the user experience space, in 12.2 exclusively, we focused on something that we call user experience convergence, which is really just a fancy way of saying that we're working to make sure that the eBusiness Suite apps stay up to pace with Oracle's corporate UI standards, so that as you're using eBusiness Suite in conjunction with, for example, the cloud apps, you're having a similar look and feel. And finally, in terms of 12.2, in terms of operational efficiency, online patching is, of course, the big breakthrough there. Here's our roadmap. You probably have seen this before, but just as a reminder, we're currently at release 12.2.6, which is the fourth minor release on release 12.2. And as you can see from this roadmap slide, we're still going. We have in planning already the 12.2.7 minor release, And we even have on the horizon a 12.3 release. So the net of this is we're still going with new releases on eBusiness Suite. Now, recently, we announced the 12.2.6 release that came out just on September 15th, 2016. And for those who haven't had a chance to look at the highlights reel for that yet, I just want to draw your attention to it. You can see a little picture there of Cliff Godwin. He's the speaker for it, and you can find that actually on this Oracle eBusiness Learning subscription. Okay, and then, of course, whenever we're talking about upgrade planning, people want to know, well, what are the current support timelines? And the new news there is that in the past year, we've actually extended the support timeline, both for 12.1 and 12.2. In the case of 12.1, you're now on full Premier support all the way out until December 2021. And when I say full Premier support, that means there'll be no fall off in support, no uplift in support fees. And then for 12.2, same thing, full Premier support all the way out until September 2023. So from a support timeline perspective, you shouldn't feel any huge pressure to do the upgrade from 12.1, but rather you should think in terms of planning that upgrade when it makes sense to your business, when you're able to evaluate the business value of going to 12.2 and then make a plan to get there. Now, these are the 12.2 upgrade planning considerations that we'll be discussing. And the first that I want to dive into is how you make the business case for doing the upgrade project. So basically, by far, the main reason to go to 12.2 is the signature feature called online patching. And this is basically the ability for you to run a near 24/7 operation, because now with 12.2, you're able to apply patches to your running production system at the same time that users remain online completely unaware of the fact that patching operations are going on. There is still a short cutover period, but it's on the order of 20 to 30 minutes, not, an hour or 2 hours or 3 hours. And the maintenance window is, in fact, very predictable. It's basically the length of time that it takes you to recycle the middle tiers and bring them back up again on the newly patched code. Now, of course, online patching is the signature feature, but there are many other functional advances in 12.2. And while I won't be covering them off in this talk, you can find out more about them from other videos on this channel. But just to note, you can see here that we've made advances in all of the product families: financials, projects, procurement, human capital management, applications technology, order management, logistics, manufacturing, asset lifecycle management, and so on. And as well, as I mentioned a few moments ago, we are also advancing the user experience with 12.2. In particular, with 12.2, we've made it a point of keeping consistent with the cloud product look and feel. We've gone to simpler layouts, and we emphasize tablet friendliness. Now, if you want to find out in detail what we've added to 12.2, the best way to do that is to drill into the release content documents. These are downloadable from the support site. If you don't have access to the support site, you may want to ask someone at your site who does to download it for you. You then can look through it, and you'll note that they're organized first by product family, and then within a product family by product, release, and feature. And there's a good amount of detail in there that you can use to evaluate the features and whether or not you see value in them for your business. So in sum, as you look to build the business case, you would think in terms of online patching, the new functionality, the modern user experience, the fact that there's a roadmap of continuing easy-to-adopt updates on the 12.2 line, and the fact that 12.2 has the longest support life. Now let's turn our attention to the factors that will influence the time and resources that you'll need to apply to this project. So some of these are probably obvious to you. I can't really tell any given customer how long their project will take. I can really just review with them the factors that will determine time and resources. The first of these, the size of your current functional footprint and whether or not you plan to uptake new functionality, as part of your upgrade, all of this will, of course, have a direct relationship to how much testing you'll need to do. And in a similar vein, if you do have a lot of customizations and integrations, that will also influence the amount of testing that you'll need to do. Just to note, there are also some new 12.2 development standards. You'll need to bring your customizations and integrations into conformance with them. A lot of times people will combine an upgrade project with other important IT changes, such as moving to new hardware or new operating system. And of course, to the degree that you do make these other IT advances, that will lengthen your project. One thing you may not have thought about that's distinct to 12.2, the complexity of your topology can be a factor in your timing in as much as you will need to do more testing of online patching if it turns out that you have a complex topology. And by that I mean, do you have, multiple middle tier nodes with some of the nodes inside the firewall, some outside the firewall? Do you have rack and the like? And that's because online patching is very much intimately kind of tied up with your topology. And finally, if you haven't guessed, this is more of a technical upgrade than some of the prior ones, so you will be depending upon the readiness of your technical team to uptake new skills, and in particular in the online patching and WebLogic server areas. Now here I use this slide to emphasize the fact that if you are on board with us for the 11.5.10 to 12.1 upgrade, the project team may have been kind of dominated by some of your functional players because that had more to do with the financials re-architecture. But of course, with this 12.1 to 12.2 upgrade, the focus will be more on the uptake of online patching, and so you will be relying upon the skill of your DBAs, your sysadmins, and your customization developers. You'll want to bring your A team to the project. Now let's look at this a little more closely. What is this online patching feature? Why is this a technical upgrade? So if we look here at the online patching cycle, we'll note that it now has 5 phases, and the phases shown in gray occur while users are online. There's really just that brief cutover period shown in red when users must be logged off. So the first phase, the prepare phase, is when the patching utilities are making copies of the code both on the file system and in the database. The apply phase, you're applying the patch. The finalize phase, there's some internal computations going on that serve to optimize or shorten the cutover period. And then once the cutover is over, there's a cleanup phase that goes on in the background where we automatically remove obsolete objects. Now, not surprisingly, online patching does rely on a dual file system. And there's basically a run file system and a patch file system. So you'll note at the bottom of the slide there, the run file system, which may initially start out pointing to file system 1 and patch file system as file system 2. During cutover, there'll actually be kind of a swapping of those file systems. And the newly patched FS2 is now designated as the run file system, while the former run file system is now designated as the patch file system, ready for the next patching cycle. Something similar is going on in the database, and there what we're doing is taking advantage of a new feature, new with 11GR2 of the database, known as edition-based redefinition. Here what we're doing is actually kind of striping the versions of code in the database. We have, again, a run edition of the code that's used by online users and is never touched by the patching utility. And then we have a patch edition, an exact copy of that run edition that is changed by the patching utilities. And again, we have the situation where during cutover, the patch edition then becomes the run edition is kind of promoted to run edition, and then what was the run edition gets kind of demoted, if you will, to being an old edition subject to cleanup down the road. And as we put this patching architecture together in a single diagram, you'll note that we have the run file system currently pointed at file system 1, the patch file system pointed at file system 2, and you'll note that each of the file systems, it's pointing to its corresponding edition in the database. And then we actually have a third file system known as the non-edition file system that we use for files for which we don't need 2 copies. And those would include files like patching files, log files, and the like. Now, as we go to kind of animate what really happens during a patching cycle, you'll note here that at the start of the prepare phase, The patch file system is basically kind of quiescent, not involved at all in the running system. And then you'll note that there's a patch that's been downloaded to the non-edition file system. The first thing that happens with the prepare is that we sync the patch file system with the run file system, and by that I mean we make it a perfect copy of the run file system, and then we instantiate a patch edition in the database. Now as we go to the apply phase, we basically apply the patch changes to the patch file system, so you note the little orange patch that's representing a change, say, to the Apple top of the patch file system, and correspondingly there may be, for example, a change to a PL SQL package in the database. Now I can't really show the finalize phase since those are internal computations, but you'll note that during the cutover phase we basically recycle the middle tiers, and then when we bring them back up again, we have now switched the designation of the file system so that file system 2, the newly patched system, is now designated as the run file system, and it is now pointed to what had been the patch edition in the database. What was the run edition of the database is now the old edition, and what was the run file system is now kind of on the sidelines waiting for the next patching cycle to begin. So hopefully that's pretty straightforward. Where it starts to get a little more interesting is in the patching of transactional data and changes to the data model. Here, what we are not doing is making copies of that transactional data. We basically retain a single copy of your transactional data in your database, and we make use of some new features, namely the additioning views that allow us to project the correct logical view of your underlying physical tables to the run and the patch edition, and we also make use of a new feature known as cross-edition triggers that allow us to propagate data updates from the run to the patch edition. This is actually easier to show again with diagrams. So what I'm showing here in the upper left is a little fragment of a fictional table that we'll call the service request table. I've got the definition of it there. It basically has 3 columns: ID, filed by, and status. And let's suppose that the patch action is to kind of change the data type of the status column from number to varchar 230. What we do not do is directly manipulate the status column because, after all, people are currently running against it. What we do is add a new column known as status #1 with the new data type. And you'll note if you look at the run edition view, it's still pointing to the old number data type, while the patch edition view is now pointing to the new varchar2 data type. Now you may want to understand what happens to the data itself, and you'll note that we use these new cross-edition triggers to map the number values to the character values, and this is all going on during the patching cycle. And again, you'll note that the run edition view is looking at numeric values 11, 30, and 90, while the patch edition view is looking at the character values open, info requested, and fixed. And if there were, say, a new row added during the course of the patch execution, the cross-edition trigger would fire again. So I know I've introduced a lot of technical concepts there around online patching, and you may want to dig into that a little deeper. What I would recommend is you check out the online patching FAQ that I highlight on the bottom of the screen. But just to net it all out, the key takeaway here is that all eBusiness Suite patches going forward from Release 12.2 on will be online patches. The online patching of code is enabled by the new dual file system and the new database editioning feature that was introduced with Database 11GR2. And the online patching of transactional tables is enabled by the new database editioning views and cross-edition triggers. Now let's see what impact the 12.2 upgrade will have on your business users. So interestingly enough, there will not be a huge impact on them. They will probably note the new, more modern user experience. They will notice any changes in functionality or business process changes that you choose to deploy. There's very little change that you would be forced to uptake. And then something interesting that we've learned only recently is that it is useful to talk to your users about their expectations around online patching downtime. So let's look at each of these in turn. In terms of modern user experience, as we noted, we're trying to keep pace with Oracle's latest and greatest standards. So you'll note that we have made available, starting with eBusiness Suite 12.2.4 and 12.2.5, a new touch-friendly homepage which bears a remarkable resemblance to the Oracle Cloud homepage. You can choose to deploy this or not. As well, you'll note that we've focused on tablet optimization, so I've shown a comparison here between the 12.1.3 view receiving transaction screen and the 12.2.5 version of it, which, as you'll note, is now HTML, lots of white space, simplification, and tablet-like objects that you can see the icons across the top for navigation. We've also made strides in moving some of our, or at least providing alternatives to some of our forms-based workbenches. We now provide, in certain cases, HTML versions of them. So here, for example, you'll note that we've provided an order management HTML user interface as an alternative to the order management forms workbench. Now, many of these changes, as I noted before, are optional, and the way you would find out is by digging into the eBusiness Suite product-specific release notes for the products of interest. What you can find there is a lot of detail, a lot of technical detail on the new and changed components, new forms, new reports, new windows, or changes to any of those, and then perhaps more importantly, whether the uptake of the change is required or is it optional. Now, in terms of online patching downtime and your user expectations around it, in discussions with customers, we've sometimes found that the users have formed the impression that they will never experience a patching downtime again, and of course that's not true. Online patching does not mean zero downtime. It means dramatically reduced downtime. But as it turns out that sometimes that downtime could be extended by your DBA if they, for example, decide to combine the online patching cutover phase with other maintenance activities that could prolong the downtime. For example, if they decide to apply custom code or update system passwords or apply patches, for example, to the database tier. As it turns out, online patching can be used only for eBusiness Suite at this point. It cannot be used for database and operating system patching. All right, moving ahead to discuss the impacts on your app's DBAs, it's fair to say that these are the folks that will probably experience the greatest impact of the 12.2 upgrade. First of all, your DBAs will need to come up to speed on the new patching utility, which we call ADOP. Now, under the covers of ADOP is ADPatch, so it has all of the functionality of ADPatch and yet more. So, for example, it does orchestrate or step you through the 5 patching phases. It automatically controls the patching of both your file system and your database. It's got a lot of options, a lot of flexibility that allow you to apply one or multiple patches in the same patching cycle, and so on and so forth. So what your DBAs are going to want to do is read about the new utility in the Oracle eBusiness Suite Maintenance Guide, and chances are they'll also want to practice using ADOP on test systems in advance of your production cutover. The other thing that's changed for DBAs is, of course, the tech stack. So they've probably gotten used to the 12.0, 12.1 tech stack that's been in place for quite a while, where there was Fusion Middleware 10G. Here, the major change is the uptake as part of the eBusiness Suite tech stack of Fusion Middleware 11G and its WebLogic server taking the place of the prior OC4J. The reason this is of interest is while WebLogic Server is a very well-known application server and some DBAs and sysadmins may have had other experience with it in the past, what they certainly will not have had experience with is using both WebLogic Server and the traditional eBusiness Suite AutoConfig tool to do 12.2 configuration. So you can't assume that, deep knowledge either of WebLogic Server or EBS AutoConfig is sufficient. Your DBA will need to come up to speed on how to use the two tools together. They're going to want to read the white paper that I've highlighted at the bottom, and then on top of that, I've, with the matrix, basically just given a quick overview of the different control panels that will come into use as your DBA goes to make 12.2 configuration changes. So they'll be using, for example, Fusion Middleware Control to make changes to the Oracle HTTP server configuration. They'll be using WebLogic Server Administration Console for configuration of the managed services. And then finally, they'll be using the traditional AutoConfig tool for configuration changes to your database, home, and your eBusiness suite. Another thing for your DBA to consider is the fact that WebLogic Server and the dual file system will increase sizing requirements. And while they can read about the increased sizing requirements in the install guide, they most certainly will want to validate that they have adequate middle tier sizing or application tier sizing through actual testing with your representative data and workloads. The other thing to highlight is that the cloning operation, while in some sense is similar to 12.1 cloning, does have some uniquenesses around it. So while, for example, the database tier cloning is somewhat similar as it was in 12.1, the apps tier cloning, while it's been streamlined to now use single-step cloning of run and patch file systems as of ADTXK Delta 7, still will have some differences from the 12.1 cloning operation. The other thing to note is that before cloning, you'll want to let any active online patching cycle complete all the way through to the cleanup phase. So we do have some official Oracle University training for apps DBAs for those who would like to take the Install, Patch, Maintain course. While it doesn't cover the upgrade to 12.2, it does cover the day-to-day operation of an eBusiness Suite system. And another thing to consider as kind of an aid to your DBAs, if you haven't already considered the uptake of the Application Management Suite for eBusiness Suite 12.2, which is basically a plug-in to the Enterprise Manager System Administration System, this is something you may want to look at in the context of 12.2. There have been a lot of optimizations to Application Management Suite basically focused on 12.2 operation. And the other thing to note is that this tool in general is basically helpful in multiple environment, multi-instance management. So just to give you the flavor of that, I'm showing a screen here that's showing how someone has used the tool to define a patch promotion policy such that you can keep and sync multiple different instances and see that on the same pane of glass. So here we're showing that a number of patches are going to be applied in a similar sequence for example, a dev, a test, and a production environment. And again, the summary here is, learn ADOP, learn about WebLogic Server and AutoConfig, reevaluate your application tier sizing, practice cloning, and consider the use of Application Management Suite. Now let's look at the upgrade impacts on your customization developers. First of all, as with any big upgrade, you're going to need to evaluate your current customizations, and part of that may be simply finding them and cataloging them. Now, most systems integrators have services or tools that can help you do this. Certainly, our own Oracle Advanced Customer Services team has a Chemly catalog service, and our Oracle Consulting team similarly has an analysis tool and service. And then, as we mentioned earlier, the Application Management Suite has many functionalities that can be helpful, including a report that will highlight your current eBusiness Suite customizations. Now, once you've identified all of your customizations and decided those that you wish to upgrade, in terms of understanding 12.2 upgrade impact on them, we do offer a few aids. One is a 12.2 data model change report that you can download from the support site, and it basically will catalog all the data model changes going from, for example, 11i to 12.2, 12.0 to 12.2, or 12.1 to 12.2. We as well have uplifted the UI standards for our OA framework-based pages, so to the degree that you have OA framework-based customizations, you'll want to look at those new UI standards. And finally, and perhaps most importantly, we have developed some new 12.2 development standards that will allow for online patching compatibility of your custom code. Now, sometimes people get a little nervous when I talk about new coding standards, so just to allay that concern, I want to highlight the fact that there's just a very small minimum set of coding standards that need to be applied to your code, your custom code, to make it so that it can run in a 12.2 environment. You could take your code to the so-called full level of compliance if you needed to be able to patch your code online, similar to the way that we patch our eBusiness Suite code online. So the decision of whether you go from minimal to full compliance is based entirely on the importance of minimizing your patching downtime. Just to illustrate this a little more clearly, you'll note that if you take your custom code to full compliance, you can apply it during the apply phase of a patching cycle, perhaps right alongside of some eBusiness Suite patches that you're applying, and your cutover duration will be completely unaffected. However, if you keep your code in the, quote, minimally compliant standard state, you won't be able to apply it during the apply phase or apply them online, but instead what you can do is wait till the end of an eBusiness Suite patching cutover phase after you've switched patch edition to run edition, and then just apply your custom code directly to the run edition, extending your cutover period, prolonging the downtime that your users experience. But then when you come up again, you're just up and running and back in the cleanup phase as before. The main standard that you need to apply in order to make your custom code minimally compliant is to make sure that it accesses the data model always through the app synonyms. We've actually had this standard in place for a long time, but with 12.2 it's actually very critical because it's only by going through that app synonym that you're assured of getting the correct logical view of the underlying physical data model. Now, thankfully, we have some automated reports that we supply that will help you to find any coding standards violations, and not only do they identify those violations, but they tell you explicitly how to fix them. There are 2 reports that you absolutely must run ahead of the online patching enablement step of your 12.2 upgrade. Those are known as the Summary Readiness Report and the Manual Fix Readiness Report that will identify any changes that you need to make sure that the online patching enablement goes properly. And then, of course, there's our standard database standards checker and file system standards checker that you will run not only in the context of an upgrade, but really any time you go to apply new custom code to your eBusiness Suite system. I just want to highlight the fact that you could be preparing your custom code today ahead of your upgrade project at any time, really, and that's because you can run the reports and apply any fixes today, including in production, and this will kind of help you get ahead of the curve. You can avoid this customization rework at upgrade time. And then, of course, you'll need to, during the course of your actual practice upgrade cycles, confirm that all of your customizations are compliant by, again, running these same reports. Another thing to note is that if you have custom or third-party integrations, you'll want to confirm that those are compliant with 12.2 standards. Now, some integrations will need changes to comply with 12.2 standards, and those would, for the most part, include integrations that make a direct connection to the eBusiness Suite database. But there'll be another class of integrations that won't require changes, typically ones that are not making a direct connection to the database, things like EBS Web Services, or integrations that are using EBS Web Services, file import, or other apps to your APIs. We do have a white paper that explains exactly which of your integrations will need to be changed to be brought into compliance, and I've noted that at the bottom of the screen. The other thing to note is that you'll want to confirm with your third-party integrators that they have validated their integrations with 12.2. So again, as a summary, you'll want to inventory your customizations, decide which ones to upgrade to 12.2, review the new 12.2 development standards for online patching compatibility, take advantage of the reports that we supply to assess your compliance to standards, decide whether you'll go with minimal versus full standards compliance, and make sure you evaluate any custom or third-party integrations to see if any 12.2 standards changes are needed for them. Now, let's talk more about the technical upgrade, and one of the things you'll need to consider is what your target code configuration should be. First off, if you happen to be still running on 32-bit Windows or Linux, you must upgrade to 64-bit. That's going to be required by 12.2. Second of all, it's going to be important that you plan to go live on the latest certified database patch set. As of the current time, around Open World of 2016, that will be 11.204 or 12.102 of the Oracle database. And you'll also need to identify any database patches that are missing and needed for eBusiness Suite 12.2. You can do this using a utility that we provide that is known as the eBusiness Suite Technology Code Level Checker. That will tell you what patches are missing. You would then apply them. As far as middle tier code level goes, the upgrade process installs Fusion Middleware 11.119, and then again you can use the eBusiness Suite Technology Code Level Checker to identify any missing middle tier patches. You would then apply those to your middle tier. In terms of your apps code level, first off, you'll want to make sure that you're always up to date with latest patching technology that you can obtain via the AD and TXK RUPs. Currently, the current version of that is Delta 8. That's been available since September 2016, but expect fairly more frequent updates of the AD/TXK RUPs than perhaps in prior releases. In terms of which of the eBusiness Suite cross-suite RUPs you should be targeting, you would choose between either 12.2.5, which has been available since October of 2015, or 12.2.6, which came out in September 26. There really is no instance that I can think of where you would go to any prior RUP level, such as 12.2.4. For those of you who will be applying localizations, you can always find out what the currently available localizations are. For example, 12.2.6 availability, I've noted there in the doc 149.1965.1. All right, let's talk about provisioning of upgrade environments. First of all, sometimes people are concerned for 12.2, will I need a bigger server? And one thing to note is while critical business operations are running in parallel with online patching, the system resources consumed by the online patching utility can be throttled. So it won't, for example, take over all of your CPU and memory. You can run it, the patching, as quickly or as slowly as you like. But it's fair to say that if your current 12.1 production operation is already topping out and fully utilizing your CPU and memory, you may want to consider adding additional hardware resources. Some storage requirements are fixed. So, for example, 12.2 will require you to double both your system table space and your seed table space. And, of course, for dual file system, you'll need double the space. Now, this is where I want to loop back on what we were discussing earlier, the potential for using, for example, additional environments, cloud-based environments for your upgrade. So here what we're highlighting is a typical upgrade, just as any other big eBusiness Suite project normally involves the proliferation of environments, different environments that allow you to evaluate, for example, 12.2.5, plan, build, and test, train your users on the new system, and then, of course, finally to go live. So typically you will need, for the duration of your upgrade project, additional non-production instances. You may want to deploy those in the cloud. So, for example, you could start with your dev and test environments, move those to the cloud. This will save you from having to go out and acquire and provision new hardware. For example, you can instead use cloud instances just for the duration of your upgrade project. Here I'm highlighting that you can do very rapid provisioning of images, cloud images from the cloud marketplace. You would basically just get a cloud subscription, and once there you have access to things like demo install images, fresh install images, provisioning tools, development tools, even the information discovery, as well as an OS-only image that you can use to, for example, lift and shift your current eBusiness Suite on-premise environment into the cloud. You could, for example, move your 12.1.3 environment to the cloud, do practice upgrades in the cloud, do development in the cloud, do testing in the cloud, whatever suits your purposes. Now, I am barely touching the tip of the iceberg of the many things that you could do with eBusiness Suite on Oracle Cloud. If you're interested in learning more about this, I recommend you go out and look at our Oracle eBusiness Suite on Oracle Cloud pages on o.com. And as well, we do have a very active blog focused on Oracle eBusiness Suite on Oracle Cloud that will bring to your attention all of the advances in that area, which are, by the way, are very rapidly ongoing. Finally, let's take a very brief look at the technical upgrade process. I'm not planning to describe it in excruciating technical detail, but just to make you aware of some differences between this technical upgrade and prior ones. First of all, you will be performing the 12.2 upgrade during downtime. You don't get online patching until you've actually completed the upgrade. This 12.2 upgrade will include, of course, the additional steps needed to enable online patching. So at the very highest level, there's going to be several steps here. Before the main upgrade downtime, you'll of course want to prepare your database. We discussed before that you'll need to bring it up to 11.204 or 12.102 and patch it up to latest patching levels. You have the option to prepare your database in a separate downtime prior to your eBusiness Suite upgrade downtime. And in fact, our performance team would probably recommend that you do that rather than combine it in the same downtime as your eBusiness Suite upgrade. You will also be using RapidInstall to lay down your 12.2.0 tech stack and apps to your code and create the dual file system. And in fact, you can do this step while your system is up and running. There's no downtime required for that particular step. Your main upgrade downtime, of course, starts with the upgrade to 12.2.0. You'll be running the 12.2.0 upgrade driver. You'll be doing this as a prerequisite to enabling online patching, for example. So first of all, you'll be applying the latest fixes to the AD code and to the 12.2.0 upgrade scripts using the AD cup, the eBusiness Suite wide cup, and other one-off patches. Once you run the upgrade to 12.2.0, you wouldn't bring your system up at the 12.2.0 level or do any sort of upgrade steps or testing at that level. Instead, you'd segue directly to the step where you're basically going to run the scripts that will enable online patching. It's this online patching enablement process that'll switch on database editioning and install the editioning views that we discussed earlier in the talk. And from here on, all the patches that you're going to be applying to your eBusiness Suite will be done using 12.2 online patching, i.e. the new ADOP utility. Once you've enabled online patching, you will then continue with the upgrade to the latest RUP levels. You'll be applying latest ADTXK RUPs, the latest 12.2 and 5 or 6 RUP, and you'll be using online patching to apply these patches, but in a special downtime mode, which expedites the patching for this upgrade process. The final stages can actually be run during uptime if you prefer. You'll be doing things like applying your translations, deploying any custom code, bringing your system, fully configuring it to production capacity and the like. And you can already have your testers back online confirming your upgrade. The main thing to note, this is a very quick trip through the technical upgrade, is that it's going to be critically important for this upgrade to follow the latest documented upgrade instructions. And I've listed out here the key documents here. It's the upgrade guide itself, as well as the latest 12.2 release notes, as well as the latest 12.2 information about the suite-wide roll-up patches. You don't want to deviate from those documented upgrade instructions. You don't want to improvise. And in fact, if you do meet any obstacles in the course of your test upgrades or beyond, you'll want to reach to support. Don't just, dig yourself deeper. Don't improvise. Our final consideration here is how do you test and optimize that upgrade process? And of course, as with any upgrade to a major new release level, you're going to plan to do full functional testing, full load and volume testing. You'll want to pay particular attention to your customizations and your integrations. You'll also want to make sure that you fully test an online patching cycle on your upgraded system before you go live. And of course, you'll want to minimize your upgrade downtime. So in terms of testing tools, this is just to note that Oracle has an automated testing tool known as Oracle Applications Testing Suite, or OATS, that includes a functional testing component, a load testing component, and a test manager. And it has a very interesting feature that optimizes it for use with eBusiness Suite, known as the Flow Builder, which you can use to expedite the generation of your testing scripts. In other words, you don't have to rely on the traditional record playback mode of generating test scripts. Instead, you can string together test scripts using pre-built component, pre-built flows, and you'll have a much quicker, more accurate test script generation process. But the other thing to highlight is that, as I noted, you'll want to test online patching on a system that matches your ultimate production topology. You don't want to be applying your first online patches after you've gone live, for example. And this will be especially critical for those of you who do have complex topologies, as I noted, those that have multiple nodes, nodes inside and outside the firewall, or rack. Now, many people will ask, how long will my upgrade downtime be? And I can't tell you with any precision how long your particular downtime will be, because of course that will depend on factors that are unique to you. What I can do is share some of the key factors that our performance team talks about, and these would be things like the mix of modules and functionality that you use, your associated data volumes, and your data distribution. Obviously, the time needed to run a particular script or job can vary quite a bit based on those factors. And obviously, scripts and jobs that change the data model will tend to run long the more data volume that you have. Hardware resources, i.e. the amount of CPU, memory, and I/O that you have available, that will obviously be a factor in your downtime. And then something that people tend to overlook, other IT changes that you plan to make during that eBusiness Suite upgrade downtime, such as upgrades to the database or switching to new hardware or operating system platforms, or even moving data centers. This could all obviously prolong your downtime. Something that some people may not have thought about is that the number and complexity of your customizations and integrations can be a factor to downtime, because there's just additional time that will be needed to deploy and test these during your downtime. And then probably the biggest factor is how much practice and how much optimization are you going to do ahead of your actual production downtime. The key to this, of course, is to plan to allow time for several practice upgrades during which you're going to iterate on a step-by-step plan of tasks and timings, refining that plan, ensuring that it's consistent with latest upgrade documentation, ensuring that it reflects the topology and the data that you plan to use in your production environment, and that you use each one of these practice iterations to optimize your timing. So, for example, if you notice that you have some long-running jobs and sequels, you're going to want to get onto that right from the first practice run, checking on the support side for any known issues and workarounds, or reaching to support as needed. You also want to consider, looking to minimize the duration of tasks done before and after the core upgrade driver runs. For example, things that sort of humans are doing, like as they are performing interim backups or they're doing final acceptance testing, you'll want to kind of practice that and squeeze as much time out of that as you can. You're going to keep doing these practice upgrades until the upgrade process is predictable and fits within the downtime window that your business has given you with no outstanding issues. I'd like to recommend to you the 2 white papers below that have been written by the performance team, where they spell all of these factors out in much more detail. So the key takeaways for this 12.2 upgrade planning is all about the fact that from 12.2 on, all eBusiness Suite patches will be online patches. Your business users will, with 12.2, experience a new, more modern UI and any new functionality that you choose to implement. Your DBAs will now, going forward, be using a new patching utility known as ADOP, and they'll be using both WebLogic Server and eBusiness Suite AutoConfig to make their configuration changes. Your developers can start from today to apply the new 12.2 standards to custom code, taking advantage of the Oracle-provided standards compliance reports, and your IT team can investigate whether they want to use the Oracle Cloud to more easily provision the additional environments that they'll need to support the 12.2 project. you can find more information about the 12.2 upgrade in kind of the usual sites, the 12.2 Information Center on MyOracle Support, the release content documents that I highlighted earlier, some 12.2 Delta training that we have in our Transfer of Information online training, again available on MyOracle Support, and our eBusiness Suite documentation web library. You also want to look more fully at this eBusiness Suite learning subscription that you're looking at right now. Basically, we're using the learning subscription to help you stay up to date on everything that's going on with eBusiness Suite. So you'll have there free access to hundreds of videos created by development that will focus on areas such as what's new, our conference presentations, our user experience, i.e. demos, and then just general advice from development. Now with that, I'm going to say thank you very much for listening and good luck with your upgrade.